Section 1. Hey guys! Tonight we're riding out into the endless grasslands of the Mongol Empire, wind in your face, hoofs beneath you, and absolutely no idea where your other sock went. Welcome to the 13th century steppe, where the cold bites early, the sky never ends, and somewhere in your saddlebag is a sealed message that could either broker peace or start a war. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And I'd love to know, where are you watching from tonight, and what time is it where you are? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up cold. That's your first mistake, falling asleep without tying your coat shut. The second mistake, forgetting to close the yurt flap, which now flaps wildly in the wind like a very angry goose. Your third mistake is yet to come, but we'll get there. You sit up slowly, bundled in layers of sheepskin, fur, and possibly a borrowed scarf from someone else's saddlebag. Your breath clouds the air in tiny puffs, and your joints crack like small drum rolls. Around you, the grr, your round felt tent, is filled with the smell of smoked mutton, horse sweat, and the ashes of last night's fire. Cozy, in a post-apocalyptic cabin in the woods sort of way. You reach out and fumble for your boots, felt-lined, stiff with frost, and extremely uninterested in cooperating this early. Outside, your horse whinnies. You hope it's the right horse. In the Mongol courier system, known as the yam, horses are your most vital, most sacred, and most inconvenient co-workers. You step outside into a frozen morning painted with hues of silver and dull gold. The grass crunches beneath your feet, and the wind cuts across the plain like a very specific insult. Your horse, short, shaggy, and slightly smug, stares at you like it knows your whole family history. Today you ride, not for fun, not for glory, but for communication. You are a yamchi, a Mongol postman. Your job? Deliver messages across the largest contiguous land empire in history. Fast, silent, efficient. You carry no banner. You wear no armor. But your saddle holds messages from the great Khan himself, sealed in wax and wrapped in oiled silk, tucked beside some cheese you really should have eaten yesterday. The Mongol postal system is the envy of the world. Set up by Genghis Khan in the early 13th century, it stretches across tens of thousands of miles of rugged, unmapped wild terrain. From the gates of China to the forests of Poland, if a message needs to move, it moves on horseback. You climb into the saddle, tugging your coat tight and checking your gear. One spare pair of reins, for when your horse eats the first. A whetstone, not for weapons, for splitting dried meat. A pouch of fermented mare's milk, don't ask, just sip. A tin whistle, not for music, for alerting way stations or scaring wolves. And of course, your official gerage, a metal tablet that grants you food, shelter, and fresh horses at every station. You trot out from camp, heading west. The first stop is horse station number 17, 25 kilometers away. There, you'll swap horses and grab a hot drink if you're lucky. If not, just a half-warm turnip and a new saddle sore. The wind picks up as you ride. The steppe opens like a scroll, all rolling grass and distant herds, broken only by the occasional stone marker or skull. You keep your eyes peeled for waymarkers, small piles of rock or bone that mark the safe route between posts. To stray is to risk vanishing into emptiness. You pass a caravan headed east, silk traders, mostly bundled like onions and wrapped in stories. One man waves. You nod. Couriers are respected and avoided. Nobody wants to mess with the person carrying the Khan's words. That kind of error ends poorly, usually with arrows. A fox darts across the path, then disappears into the grass. You smile. A good omen. Behind you, the sun finally clears the edge of the horizon. Your horse snorts, your saddle creaks, and the message in your bag shifts slightly as if eager to reach its destination. And you ride. Because dawn has broken, the frost is melting, and the Mongol Empire waits for no one. Section 2. The sky opens wide as you settle into your ride, your breath joining the morning mist in short, frosty puffs. The landscape rolls beneath you, soft, endless grasslands stretching to every horizon, broken only by distant hills that look like sleeping giants with mossy blankets. Your horse trots steadily, its hooves thudding with a rhythm as regular as a heartbeat. You shift in the saddle, already feeling the early warning signs of a classic postman's predicament: saddle numbness. Today, you're covering a full stretch of the Yam Road, a segment of the vast Mongol courier network, and to do that properly, you need a perfect saddle. Or at least, a not wrong one. Yours is made of wood and rawhide, reinforced with iron rivets and lined with fur, stiff, functional, and about as forgiving as a boulder in a wool coat. It's built for endurance, not comfort. A typical Mongol post saddle doesn't just hold you, it locks you in. You sit high, knees bent, heels tucked, posture alert. Not that you're planning to fight anyone. But if a bandit appears or a wild yak decides to question your authority, you'll want to be ready. Tied behind your seat is a small saddlebag. Nothing grand, just 2 pouches of dried meat, some rock-hard biscuits you've gnawed down to the consistency of pottery, and your all-important message tube. This is no ordinary scroll case. It's oil-sealed, horn-capped, and marked with the tamga of the Khan himself. Anyone tampering with it would answer directly to the imperial court, which, by Mongol standards, means arrow first, questions never. Tucked beside that is your jarraj, a gleaming, stamped tablet of authority. Made of bronze, sometimes silver, it functions like an ID, a passport, and a golden ticket all in one. When shown to a station master, it means free lodging, food, replacement horses, and not having to pay tolls. It also means, importantly, respect. Without it, you're just a tired guy on a pony. With it, you're an extension of the empire. As the grass ripples in the wind and the sun rises behind you, you start mentally checking your route. You've got to hit Station 17 before noon, and ideally make it to Station 19 by nightfall. That means roughly 100 kilometers in one day, on multiple horses, each one swapped every 25 to 30 kilometers to keep the pace brisk and the legs unbroken. You think back to your training, back when you learned to ride without reins, read wind for storms, and eat while galloping. Yes, that's a thing. Your mentors called it one-hand feeding. You call it chewing without dying. You pull out a strip of dried meat, bite down and wince. It's less chewy and more geological, but it gets the job done. Your horse flicks an ear at the sound and picks up the pace, sensing the day is only just beginning. As you ride, you pass an old signal post, a raised platform with a fire pit, now cold. These were once used to send smoke signals to distant stations, part of an early warning system and emergency relay. Mongol efficiency at its finest. Light a fire, send a puff, and a rider might be waiting on the next ridge before the ash cools. You adjust your saddle strap and shift your weight. The Mongols weren't just conquerors, they were logistical geniuses. The Yam system connected thousands of way stations across their empire, some with stocked food, fresh horses, guards, and message rooms. Riders like you were expected to cover up to 250 kilometers in a single day if the message was urgent. That meant riding hard, changing mounts swiftly, and never, ever losing your message. You pass a small herd of wild sheep. One looks up, unimpressed. Your horse snorts. It's fine. Sheep are terrible critics. The saddle creaks beneath you, but it holds. Your posture is sore but serviceable. The message at your side stays snug. Somewhere beyond the horizon, a way station waits with a bowl of hot milk and a slightly better saddle. You ride on. Section 3. The sun is edging higher now, casting long golden streaks across the grasslands and giving your shadow a heroic slant, completely at odds with the fact that your thighs feel like they've been roasted over a campfire and your fingers are permanently shaped like horse reins. Still, your pace is steady. The message you carry bumps lightly against your hip, a constant reminder of the invisible weight of empire. You glance down at it now, tucked in its oiled leather case. No cracks, no leaks. The wax seal still intact, a perfect blob of hardened red, stamped with the unmistakable mark of the Great Khan, a half-moon flanked by twin falcons. You don't know what the message says. You're not supposed to. That's rule number 1 of the Yam: do not read the mail. Tempting though it may be to peek, especially when you've been galloping across lonely hills for hours with nothing but dust and squirrels for company. But you've heard rumors. Mongol messages were more than just polite notes or tax demands. Some held trade decrees, others held military orders. Occasionally, they were diplomatic death sentences, sealed in gold and delivered with a polite smile and several armed guards. The most secure ones were written on silk, not paper, so they could be burned quickly if captured. Others were carved into wooden slips that clacked faintly when handled. Some were simple oral codes, relayed by memory only, and sometimes only by writers who'd been trained from childhood in riddle speak, a sort of poetic, deliberately vague dialect meant to confuse any would-be interceptors. You didn't carry those. You were barely qualified to recite a shopping list. This particular message, though, was important. You can tell by the weight of the case, the extra seal, and the fact that your route includes only high-clearance stations, which means the message either contains royal correspondence, classified military routes, or a really urgent complaint about overcooked dumplings from the Khan's cousin in Bokhara. Historically, Mongol messages were so vital that writers were required to swear oaths of silence and could be executed for losing or even delaying a message without due cause. You once heard of a courier who arrived at a station half a day late due to a broken stirrup and was reassigned to shovel yak pens for 6 months. No pressure. As you ride, you pass a low ridge where the earth crumbles into red dust. There's an old stone cairn there, marked with faded characters in Turkic script. An older message post, perhaps, from a time before the yam. You slow slightly to pay respects, as is customary. Many couriers pass this way. Not all of them made it. You think about the message again. Inside that simple case, there might be a letter that will change the path of a war. Or maybe it's an inventory of felt boots. Or a marriage proposal. There's one apocryphal tale about a Mongol writer who delivered a message proposing a marriage between 2 regional governors' daughters. The only problem? He mixed up the scrolls, and each governor received the other's tax schedule. Both thought it was an insult. Tensions flared, and it reportedly took 2 gallons of kumis and a new goat to resolve the diplomatic mishap. No one remembers the writer's name. That's probably for the best. You refasten the strap across the message tube and adjust its position. Always on your right side. Always snug under your coat if it starts to rain. If you fall, the message must be the last thing to hit the ground. Ahead now, you spot a low wooden post with a scrap of faded cloth fluttering in the wind, a station marker. You've reached the outer limits of Station 17. Soon you'll hand this message over to the station master to verify its seal, log your time of arrival, and prep your next horse. But for now, you allow yourself one last glance at the sealed case. Somewhere in that tube lies a sentence that only 2 people in the Empire are meant to read. One wrote it, one will receive it, and you're the ghost in between. Section 4. Your horse crests the last hill before the station, mane damp with sweat, and legs trembling just slightly, the satisfying wobble of a mount that knows it's about to be relieved of duty. Ahead, the low structure of horse station number 17 rises from the grass like a glorified vegetable crate, smoke curling from a small chimney, and a set of spears stacked neatly outside the gate. This is no fortress, but it's one of the most crucial links in the imperial chain. The yam stations were the Mongol postal empire's beating hearts. Scattered every 25 to 40 kilometers, they offered fresh horses, food, shelter, and the one thing every courier needs most, a place to stretch your spine back into a human shape. You trot into the yard. A boy appears with a pail of water and an expression that says, "I hope you're not the one who overfed the goats last week." You hand over your reins and dismount with all the grace of a bag of turnips being tipped off a cart. Your knees forget how to function. Your spine files a complaint. Your hips threaten revolt. "Rider from Station 16, you croak. Message for the west route." The station master, a woman in her 40s with forearms like mallets and eyes that could interrogate a squirrel, steps forward. She takes one look at your face, your dust-caked gear, and your horse and nods. "You're late." You're not, but this is her sense of humor. She waves you toward the courier's tent, a low yurt that smells of warm broth and old felt. Inside, another rider is already slumped against the wall, sipping a ladle of arag, fermented mare's milk, slightly sour, slightly fizzy, and very much an acquired taste. You get your own ladle. It's tepid and smells vaguely like someone tried to make yogurt out of athletic socks. You drink it anyway. It works. Your mouth unglues. Your thoughts slow to a pleasant slurry. The station master returns and takes your message case, not to open it, that's illegal, but to log its condition and time of arrival. She checks the wax seal, then presses it onto a sheet of clay to make an impression. That gets filed with the delivery record, alongside the weight of the courier, the arrival time, and this is real, the mood of the horse. There's even a box on the form that reads, horse demeanor, sun calm / jittery / cloud hostile / refuse to be saddled. You take a bowl of hot broth, mostly onions, maybe a carrot, and sit beside the other rider. He grunts. Storm to the north. You're lucky. My horse tried to join a herd of wild asses. Took 3 of us to catch it. He gestures at his arm, now wrapped in a sling. You nod in sympathy. Out in the yard, a young handler walks past with your next horse. Short, muscular, unimpressed. Its eyes say, try something funny and I will end your career. You walk with your bowl in hand to meet it. The handler offers a scrap of dried apricot and a warning. She bites reins. Tie high. You check the girth, adjust your saddle, and tuck your gear in tight. Your gerrage flashes in the sunlight, a small, heavy reminder of the road ahead. Before you leave, you receive your station token, a carved disc of wood stamped with today's date and your route symbol. You'll leave it at Station 18 to prove you stopped here. It's an old system, but it works. Lose one, and someone starts asking whether you skipped a leg, got ambushed, or decided to nap under a tree. You mount again. The new horse is stiffer but faster. Eager. The station fades behind you as you head west once more. And as the hoofbeats pick up again, you feel something you didn't expect, comfort. The saddle, though awful, feels familiar now. The wind against your face is oddly refreshing. And your mind, fed and hydrated, begins to wander. Only another 90 kilometers to go. Section 5. The grassland unfolds again, like someone rolling out a green carpet with no end. Your new horse moves differently, snappier in the shoulders, less interested in trotting, more inclined to lurch into a full gallop whenever it feels bored, which is often. You've barely left Station 17 behind, but already you're feeling the difference. This mount wants speed. That's good. That's the whole point. You are a small, crucial cog in a masterpiece of medieval logistics, known as the YAM system, the imperial postal network established by Genghis Khan in the early 13th century. It's not just impressive for its scale, it's breathtaking in its efficiency. At its height, the YAM could move a message from Mongolia to Eastern Europe in a matter of weeks, a feat unmatched for centuries. So how did they do it? First, the stations. There were thousands of them, tiny hubs dotting every major route like pearls on a thread, each staffed with fresh horses, stable hands, station masters, and if you were lucky, a pot of hot something. Some stations were just tents. Others had permanent buildings, storage rooms, and guard posts. No matter their size, they were positioned for speed. You didn't ride one horse the whole journey. That would be absurd. Horses get tired. You don't stop. So instead, you change horses at each station, sometimes every 25 kilometers. The moment your mount slowed, you were off it, handing your gear to a waiting boy, leaping onto a fresh beast, and thundering onward without missing a hoofbeat. Then there were the gerrage, those sturdy, stamped plaques of privilege. Without one, you were no one. With one, you could demand food, shelter, and the best horse in the pen. It was a Mongol courier's golden shield. Even nobles were expected to honor it. Failure to do so could earn you a visit from the Khan's more persuasive representatives. But speed wasn't just about distance, it was about information control. The Mongols knew that whoever held the most current news, battle updates, trade routes, alliance shifts, held power. So the YAM was as much a weapon as any sword. You pass another cairn now, a flat stone marker with notches. These used to be part of the signal system. Couriers would leave coded signs for one another in case of delays, dangers, or weather threats. A vertical notch meant detour east. A split stone. Bandits ahead. A small pile of 3 pebbles beside it. Dead horse. Take caution. You glance at today's clean. No notches. Good. The wind picks up as your horse tears across a patch of stony ground. Your legs ache. Your back protests, but the rhythm is so familiar now it feels like breathing. You don't stop to admire the view, but a part of your mind notices the colors of a sky shifting, the pale blue deepening, a few wispy clouds sneaking in from the north. And then, just like that, you see it. Another rider. Far ahead, A dust trail curls up behind a dark dot on the horizon. He's headed east, fast, his posture stiff and upright. Another yam courier. You both slow slightly as you pass, enough for a silent nod, the only greeting allowed when on duty. You think you catch a flash of his gerrage hanging from his belt. He vanishes behind you within seconds. That's the yam. Quiet, precise, always moving. Some fringe historians like to compare it to the internet. Fast-moving information, decentralized control, networked infrastructure. Others compare it to blood vessels. But the best description might come from an old poem etched in a Sogdian traveler's notes. They ride like the wind that speaks. They stop for no moon. The message is the master. You grin, because that's exactly how it feels. You're not a warrior, not a noble, not even a priest, but you carry the voice of the empire. And the hooves beneath you haven't slowed yet. Section 6. By the time the sun climbs to its peak, you're starting to hallucinate onions. Not visions of actual onions, just the idea of them. Roasted, spiced, possibly served with dumplings. Your stomach growls in agreement, which is exactly why you begin slowing your mount as the next station comes into view. A low wooden structure with smoke rising from a central chimney and 2 tethered horses munching happily on what must be the last green grass in all the empire. You've reached a midday stop, not a full yam station, but what couriers call a rest hut. Smaller, quieter, usually staffed by one very tired person and one deeply judgmental cat. Still, it offers what you crave, a hot drink and something vaguely chewable. You dismount, stretch, and try not to cry as your knees pop like distant firecrackers. A man in a fur vest greets you with a grunt and a ladle. He doesn't ask for your name. He doesn't check your message seal. He just ladles a scoop of brothy something into a shallow clay bowl and walks away. You sniff. Onion. Goat. A few grains of millet. Could be worse. Next comes the drink. A cup of suti tsai, the Mongol version of tea. Don't get too excited. It's more like salty milk water, made from boiled water, dried tea leaves, yak milk, and a liberal pinch of salt. Sometimes butter is involved. Today's version has a mysterious beige skin floating on top. You sip carefully. It tastes like warmth and livestock, which is basically 5 stars out here. As you eat, your body begins to thaw. You let your horse rest near the station's small corral, where it immediately flops to the ground and begins rolling with abandon. A good sign. It knows you're not riding it again. Inside the rest hut, the walls are decorated with scratched-in symbols from previous riders. Simple things like sun equals clear skies ahead, equals spare horse available. Frowning face equals weak tea, avoid. You add your own, discreetly. Sun hot beverage skull and crossbones. Translation: clear ride, tolerable tea, possible goat bones. After a while, the station keeper reappears and offers something wrapped in cloth. Dried curds. Sour, hard as ceramic buttons, and impossible to chew without pre-softening in tea. You pocket a few anyway. They'll last forever, and they squeak amusingly between your molars. Then he brings out the surprise, a half-boiled egg preserved in salt and ash. You hesitate. He nods gravely. This is a gesture of respect. You accept. You chew slowly. It tastes like dust, regret, and faintly of sulfur. But you swallow and bow, and he nods again, satisfied. There's not much conversation. Rest huts aren't places for talk. They're for silence, broth, and stalling just long enough to feel your toes again. Eventually, you pull out your gear, inspect the message seal, still intact, and recheck your saddle straps. You've got another 40 kilometers to go before sundown. If you time it right, you might even make it to Station 19 before the stew runs out. You mount your next horse, a spirited little gray with one ear bent permanently sideways, and offer a final wave to the station keeper. He doesn't wave back, but you swear the cat does. As you ride off, warmed and slightly queasy, you marvel at the quiet brilliance of a system. Broth for fuel, tea for spirit, and curds for absolutely no reason at all. But it works, and you ride on. Section 7. The air begins to cool as you push westward again, the sunlight flattening into a soft gold that stretches shadows into ribbons across the grass. Your new horse, let's call her Nudge, because she needs one every 10 minutes, is slower but steadier The kind of mount that might get you there an hour late but with your knees still attached. As you ride, you start thinking about something most couriers never talk about: the actual message. Not what it says. You're not suicidal, but what it's written on. See, not all messages are created equal. Some are lavish scrolls of silk, perfumed and dyed. Others are bark strips, stitched parchment, or even, if you're particularly unlucky, thin pieces of wood that splinter like philosophy students under pressure. You've carried them all, and everyone comes with its own set of problems. Silk messages are beautiful, lightweight, and practically waterproof when oiled properly. They're favored by the elite, khans, princesses, governors trying to impress each other. But they're slippery. One good jostle, and the scroll might slide out of its case like a rebellious eel. Not to mention the ink. If it smudges, someone might misread greetings as grievance, and suddenly you're delivering a declaration of war in a gift box. Bark strips are more rustic, usually birch or willow, used by steppe tribes or military messengers who need something sturdy. They hold up well to weather, but they're brittle. Fold them wrong, and you're left with a pile of fire-starting material and a death sentence. Then there's oiled parchment, which sounds fancy but smells like a goat got into your laundry. Still, it's flexible, tough, and holds ink better than most surfaces. Downside: if it gets too warm, it warps. Ever tried reading a diplomatic letter that now looks like a cinnamon roll? Exactly. Some messengers even carry oral messages, memorize code phrases passed from mouth to ear. You've only done this once, and you still wake up occasionally wondering if you really got that merchant's daughter's name right. Probably not. She looks surprised. And the worst: double messages. That's when you're given two scrolls, one visible and polite, the other hidden and spicy. The idea is that if you're caught, the bandits or rival scouts find the fake message, the decoy, and leave the real one untouched. The problem? If you forget which one is which, congratulations, you just swapped a dinner invitation for a list of fortress weaknesses. You once heard a story, true or not, of a courier who delivered the wrong bark scroll to a border chieftain. The chieftain read the message, paled, and immediately began preparing for siege. The actual message, still in the courier's boot, mistaken for a foot warmer. So now, as Nudge clomps dutifully along, you pat your message tube for the 5th time in half an hour. Still sealed, still secure, still a complete mystery. You wonder who wrote it. You wonder who'll read it. And you wonder how often they'll think about the person who kept it dry, warm, uncrumpled, and unchid by horses all the way across a continent. The Mongol postal system relied not just on speed, but on durability. That's why you carry oiled leather cases, double-layered wax seals, and a spare wrap made from tightly woven reed fiber that repels moisture better than any modern raincoat. You shift slightly in the saddle, the message case bumping against your hip. There's a security in that bump. It says, "I'm here. I'm intact. I'm not currently on fire." Sometimes. That's all you need. Section 8. The sun is sinking toward the horizon now, fat and orange like it's been roasted over a slow fire. The sky bleeds into a gradient of soft violets and bruised pinks, and the temperature drops in that sudden, impolite way unique to open landscapes. Your horse, bless her cautious soul, has slowed to a reasonable pace, and you begin eyeing the distance for the next waypoint. You're looking for Horse Station 18, your evening destination. Instead, you find a goat. More specifically, a gur surrounded by goats, all of whom stop chewing at once to stare at you like you've just insulted their grandmother. A child pops out from behind the flap of the yurt, then quickly ducks back in. Soon a woman emerges, wiping her hands on an apron. She looks you up and down. You hold up your gerrage, trying to signal that you're a courier. She squints. "You're early," she says. That's your first clue that something's off. You dismount, cautious. The girl looks like a station, but something's not quite right. The horses tied nearby aren't fast courier types, they're stocky, village plotters. The station marker is missing. And no one is wearing the red sash, usually tied around the waists of official handlers. You've done it. You've made every yam courier's nightmare. You've delivered to the wronger. It happens. Roads shift, cairns get knocked down, tired riders miss a turn, and boom, you're offering imperial correspondence to a family of herders who just wanted to finish dinner without imperial entanglement. The woman gestures you inside. It's warm. It smells like soup. You're invited to sit, and you accept because refusing hospitality in these parts is worse than reading someone's mail. You're handed a bowl of broth. A man joins, then another. A child brings a tray of fried dough twists that taste like nostalgia and engine grease. You sip slowly, trying to figure out your next move. This isn't Station 18. But you can't leave immediately. You need to wait for the light to fade just enough to hide your embarrassment. One of the men asks if you've brought news from Karakoram. You smile politely and say you're not at liberty to say. Another asks if the Khan still has a mustache. You nod gravely. At some point, the goat wanders in. You don't question it. Eventually, you make your apologies and remount. They don't seem offended. This sort of mix-up is just part of life on the steppe. The woman hands you a wrapped bundle, leftover dumplings, still warm. You thank her, bow once, and ride off into the fading dusk. Back on the road, the real road, you spot a cairn you missed earlier, half covered in dust. A single carve mark points left, not right. That's where you went wrong. Within 20 minutes, the true Station 18 appears, neatly marked, brightly lit, and mercifully goat-free. A young station master greets you with a surprised look. "You're late," she says. You nod. "There was a detour. Involving soup." She doesn't ask. You hand over your message tube, show your gerrage, and receive a nod of approval. Inside the station yurt, the fire crackles. A fresh bowl of broth waits. You settle beside it, grateful, and take a bite of dumpling from your accidental hosts. It's delicious. You make a mental note to always double-check cairns. And to trust the goats. They always look guilty when you're in the wrong place. Section 9. The sky is fully dark now, the stars pricked sharp against the black. You lie on a thin felt mat in the corner of Station 18's yurt. Your saddle is a pillow, and your knees still twitching slightly from the ride. You should sleep. You want to sleep, but your mind, over-caffeinated on broth and goat-related shame, is already drifting toward your next destination. And what's sitting right beside you, practically humming with tension? That message case. You've been carrying it for over 300 kilometers now. You've not looked inside, of course, but the seal on the cap, a wax stamp of the Great Khan's personal crest, practically glows in the firelight. You wonder again what's inside. It might be a trade agreement, a promise of camels and silver from Bokhara in exchange for protection along the desert roads. Or maybe a military decree, shifting border patrols and setting the stage for a quiet conquest. But the most likely candidate? A diplomatic letter. Because that's what most Mongol messengers carried. Not threats, but diplomacy. Letters sent across continents to kings, sultans, emperors, and city governors. Messages that changed hands with silken bows, that got read aloud in grand courts, and that sometimes arrived with entire caravans as proof of Mongol power and generosity. Your letter might be one of those. You imagine a bearded scribe unfurling it in some far-off city, reading in a slow, formal tone. By the decree of the Great Khan, ruler of the 4 quarters of the earth, we offer friendship, protection, and a request for grain, in the interest of peaceful commerce and mutual advantage. Flowery? Sure, but it worked. Often, Mongol diplomacy preempted violence. A good letter, well delivered, could sway a city more effectively than 10,000 arrows. That's why messengers like you mattered so much. You carried not just information, but intent. Tone, timing, presence. In fact, some letters were calibrated based on how they would arrive. A courier might be instructed to deliver a message in silence, bowing and backing out without a word. Others were told to read the message aloud themselves, in case the recipient was too arrogant to listen to a local interpreter. You were trained for both, and in truly high-stakes cases, a message might be accompanied by gifts, bolts of silk, jade figurines, silver cups, or a particularly handsome falcon. There's a well-documented case of a Mongol envoy arriving at the Delhi Sultanate bearing a message of peace, and a literal wagon full of pastries. No one's entirely sure what kind, but the Sultan didn't invade Mongolia, so the pastries worked. Even Genghis Khan himself sent such letters. One of the most famous was addressed to the Khwarezmian Shah, a carefully worded note offering peace, trade, and cultural exchange. The Shah responded by executing the envoy, which, to put it delicately, did not go over well. The Khan invaded with overwhelming force. The cities of the Shah's empire were razed, and the Mongols never forgot the insult to their postal service. You glance at your message case again. It's sealed, yes, but it's also symbolic. The very act of sending a letter by a mounted courier across deserts and rivers and wolves was a gesture of trust. A message meant, we are willing to talk. We are powerful, yes, but also listening. So you shift your saddle pillow a little, adjust your coat, and let the fire warm your face. Whatever's in that case, it's history in motion. And you're the one making it move. Section 10. You're up before dawn again. The stars haven't faded yet, and your breath fogs the air as you step outside Station 18, saddle in hand, teeth politely ignoring the chill. Your next stretch is shorter, only 20 kilometers, but the delivery point is delicate. Today, you're delivering a message to a Mongol princess. Yes, you read that right. Her name is Altani, and her tent is said to sit atop a low ridge near the river, wrapped in layers of silk and horsehair, with guards who speak little and notice everything. She's not a royal in a tower type, more the kind of person who can name every horse in her stables and still outshoot her brothers at 50 paces. She's also, inconveniently, extremely punctual, which means you need to arrive exactly at first light. You ride through pre-dawn frost, hooves crunching over brittle grass. The river glints ahead, and as the sun begins to rise, a sliver of camp appears on the hill, a cluster of yurts that gleam faintly in the light. 2 banners flutter near the main tent, each marked with the royal tamga, the seal of her family. You slow your mount and approach on foot, as required by protocol. No weapons, no shouting, no jokes. You pull your gerage from your coat, polish it against your sleeve, and bow as a guard appears. He takes one look at the seal and waves you forward without a word. Inside the tent, the temperature is comfortable. A brazier glows. A silver tea tray sits ready. And there she is, Princess Altani, seated cross-legged on a mat, hair braided into a crown, fingers stained with ink from the correspondence she was probably writing 3 hours ago. You bow again, deep, lower than usual. She gestures for you to approach. You kneel and remove the message tube from your coat. You present it with both hands, seal forward. She accepts it, turns it once, then hands it to an aide without a word. Then she looks at you. You're early, she says. It's not a question. You nod, but say nothing. Words, here, are earned. She studies you for a moment longer, then gestures toward the tea tray. And just like that, you're being offered salted tea in a silver cup by a woman who commands armies and can likely read 4 languages. You sip, carefully. The tea is strong, scented faintly with juniper, and incredibly hot. You manage not to cough. Success. Altani says nothing further. You finish your tea, bow again, and exit without turning your back. The guard outside nods slightly in approval. And as you remount, it occurs to you, you'll never know what was in that message. A political alliance, a land grant, a poem, it doesn't matter. What matters is that it got here, intact, on time, and handed directly to someone who could command 1,000 riders if she felt like it. Back on the road, the grass is beginning to steam in the morning sun. You ride light, your bag now emptier, your posture a bit straighter. Because whether it was diplomacy, command, or marriage proposal, you just delivered a message that might shape a region. And you did it without tripping over your own boots. Section 11. The sun is higher now, and you've traded royal tents and silver tea for something a little less glamorous. A stretch of road that is equal parts mud, confusion, and horse-related existential doubt. You're halfway between stations, following a trail that was definitely the main road this morning, but now looks more like a goat's suggestion. The grass is taller here. The markers are faint. And your horse, let's call this one Grumbles, keeps stopping to sniff bushes like they might contain meaning. You reach into your saddlebag for your map, a beautifully inked guide of routes and stops that, under normal circumstances, would be your compass and comfort. It's not there. You check again. Nothing. A moment of panic. Then realization. The flap of your bag is slightly chewed, and beside it, a damp corner of parchment sticks out from your saddle blanket. Your horse has eaten your map. You stare at Grumbles. Grumbles stares at you. Somewhere in that deep, unblinking gaze is the satisfaction of a job undone. There's no backup. Of course not. Maps are valuable. They're not issued freely to couriers. They're loaned, copied, sometimes even whispered. Your particular map was drawn by hand, with ink smuggled in from the south, marked with symbols that only made sense after 3 months of training. And now it's breakfast. Fortunately, this is why Mongol messengers weren't trained to rely on maps. The most trusted couriers were expected to memorize their routes, stations, rivers, ridges, distances, wind signs, grass color, and even the way certain rocks leaned at sunset. Navigation wasn't paper. It was pattern. You close your eyes and replay the mental script. Station 19 should be due northwest, past a low hill that resembles a turtle, not helpful now, and a split rock shaped like a spearhead, possibly helpful if you hadn't just passed 17 split rocks. Still, you follow the terrain. The wind shifts. The grass thins slightly, and there, yes, that's it, a small wooden post with a single carved groove. That's your next marker. Grumble seems unimpressed, but you push forward. The terrain gets rougher. At one point, you cross a dry stream bed and spot a pile of dung you recognize from 2 weeks ago. Yes, really. That's how long you've been doing this. You remember specific dung. But navigation isn't about grandeur. It's about micro details. The way the wind smells after a bend, the birds that change calls as you near a river, the subtle slope of land beneath your boots. Still, not everyone had your memory. Some couriers carried song maps, routes encoded into chants or melodies. One verse might represent distances between stations. Another turns at rivers. If you forgot a leg, you could hum it back into your head. One fringe method involved whistle maps, a code of short and long whistles that reminded riders of directions. Rare, annoying to horses, but surprisingly effective. There's even a legend, probably exaggerated, of a courier who tattooed an entire route on his forearm, then covered it with soot. When he needed it, he'd wipe away the soot and read his own skin. Ambitious, very itchy. As for you, you finally crest the last ridge and see Station 19 ahead. Relief floods you until you realize you have to explain the chewed map to the station scribe. You ride in, dismount, and hand over your gerrage. The scribe greets you with a bored expression. Then he sees the edge of parchment sticking from your saddlebag. He squints. Is that horse spit? You nod solemnly. Diplomatic digestion, you say. He nods back. No further questions. You're handed a ladle of warm broth, a slate for checking in, and a new horse who looks like it knows exactly what it's doing. You didn't need the map after all. You had the road in your head the whole time. Section 12. Midday sun casts hard shadows as you mount your next horse. This one lean, energetic, and bouncing on its hooves like it's been fed nothing but fermented apples and praise. You barely get your feet into the stirrups before it jolts forward. This isn't a ride. It's a controlled explosion. You hold tight. Welcome to the most exciting and least safe skill in the Yam courier's arsenal, the saddle swap at speed. Ordinarily, when you hit a horse station, you dismount, hand off your tired mount, and wait patiently for the fresh one to be saddled and brought out. But sometimes the message is too urgent, or the station is compromised, or the station doesn't exist anymore. Floods, wolves, politics, you'd be surprised. In those moments, trained couriers were taught to execute the running mount transfer, the postal service equivalent of changing cars while driving down a cliff at 90 kilometers per hour. You're not there yet, but you're about to be. Halfway to Station 20, you spot it. A small outpost, not on your original route. A temporary horse depot, set up with nothing more than a single post, a spare mount tied loosely to it, and one boy sitting beside a kettle and looking very proud of himself. You whistle twice, the signal for prepared swap. The boy jumps up, grabs the fresh mount, and trots it out. You slow slightly, not stop, just enough to gauge distance. Your current horse, let's call this one Cannonball, is breathing hard. She knows she's done. You grip your saddle horn, take a deep breath, and at just the right moment, you swing. It's not a leap, not quite. More like a sideways fall with flair. One leg over, both arms reaching for the next horse's neck. You land harder than you'd like, scramble for the reins, and with one desperate kick you're on. The boy cheers behind you. The new horse, solid, focused, less emotionally volatile than Cannonball, takes off at a smooth canter. You settle in. The saddle is stiff but well-oiled. The reins don't stick. The wind is behind you. Success. Only trained couriers could do this maneuver. It required timing, trust, and absolutely no fear of cracked ribs. You were taught to practice on sand, then packed dirt, then on full gallop between two tethered mounts in a training circle. Your instructor once said, "If you're not mildly concussed, you're not trying hard enough." The Mongols designed their courier saddles to make this possible. High-backed, horned, with wide stirrups for fast entry. Not luxurious, but perfectly functional. You could grab, swing, brace, and bolt all in one motion. And here's the best part. Sometimes, the messages themselves would specify express transfer. That meant no stops at stations, just horse swaps every leg. Run, leap, repeat. Riders were staggered across the network to pull this off like a living conveyor belt. One message could pass through 20 couriers and arrive in a different country within 4 days. This was 13th century logistics, and it was beautiful. You lean low as the wind cuts across your face. The terrain blurs slightly. You pass a low flock of birds, a ridge of sun-bleached bones, and a sleeping shepherd who does not notice your passing. Your legs ache. Your back knots. Your hair is now fully aligned with the Mongol trade winds. But you smile, because today you did it. You swapped saddles at speed. You didn't fall. You didn't panic. And somewhere in your satchel, the message still waits. Sealed. Safe. Moving. Section 13. The afternoon is turning strange. It's not the sky. It's as clear and wide as ever. It's not the road. You're galloping cleanly along a well-worn track. It's the silence. A heavy, muffled sort of hush that seems to stretch even the sound of your horse's hooves. You feel it before you see it. And then, just beyond the next rise, you find it. A field. Quiet. Wide. Still. You slow your mount to a walk. Grass moves gently in the breeze, broken here and there by scattered stone markers. Some are deliberate, stacked into cairns. Others are accidental, the shattered remains of weapons, armor, splintered beams, and bones, some bleached white, others barely visible in the soil. You've entered a place known to riders only by whispered nickname, the Road of Bones. It's not a battlefield, not anymore. That was years ago. A skirmish between two rival Mongol generals, cousins if the stories are true, who disagreed about tribute, territory, and whose horse was faster. No one talks much about the details. What matters is that the yam path still runs through here because it has to. The road doesn't bend for ghosts. You dismount, not out of fear, but out of something else, respect. Even hardened messengers are taught to walk this stretch. Not for religious reasons, exactly. Just a custom. A pause. A way to remind yourself that speed has a cost, and the land remembers it. You walk beside your horse, your boots brushing old arrowheads and fragments of saddle leather. One skull pokes up from the grass. A helmet still covers half of it, the rim cracked, a tuft of fur clinging stubbornly to the edge. You offer a quiet nod and keep moving. The yam system was built for peace, but peace doesn't erase what came before. Many riders, yourself included, are veterans or the children of warriors. That's part of what makes you good at this job. You know when to go fast and when to slow down. Halfway through the field, you spot something unusual, a message post, low and battered but still upright. Carved into its surface is a symbol you've never seen before. A spiral, circled by 3 dots. You stare. Then you remember a fragment from your training scrolls. It's a memorial mark, used rarely and only by riders. It means, do not rush. They rode too. The path begins to climb again, pulling you toward the next ridge. The sound returns, wind in the grass, hooves in the dirt, a hawk screeching somewhere overhead. You mount quietly, take one last look back, and move on. Not faster, not slower, just onward, because the message still matters. The rider must continue. And the road, even lined with bones, leads forward. Section 14. Dusk approaches, and with it comes the soft hum of voices, the clink of pots, and the unmistakable smell of onion stew laced with horse, sweat, and diplomacy. You're nearing a cluster of tents that don't belong to a single station or even a village. They belong to other couriers. You've stumbled into the rarest, most delightful Mongol phenomenon, a messenger bottleneck. It happens now and then. Weather delays, way station shortages, horses that decide they no longer believe in movement. When it does, yam riders converge like river foam, gathering in temporary roadside camps. It's unplanned, unofficial, deeply inefficient, and absolutely necessary for morale. You tie your horse and join the circle. A dozen other riders, some chewing reeds, others mending saddles. They look up, nod, scoot over. Someone hands you a bowl. No questions, no greetings beyond a simple, long road. You nod, and then the gossip starts. Not scandal, not court secrets, just the kind of sideways intelligence that makes a courier's life easier. Station 21 ran out of salt 2 days ago. Bring your own. The new scribe at 24 checks wax seals twice. Don't look nervous. Avoid the West Ridge near the burned pine, wild dogs nesting. But there's more. One rider leans in and whispers, "Did you hear about the courier who traded his gerrage for a new horse?" Gasps. Laughter. One person spits broth. It's the ultimate yam taboo, relinquishing your courier pass, your sacred plaque, for anything. Even for a white mare with silver hooves and no sense of personal space. The rumor ends with the rider being demoted to mud tent assistant, forever boiling tea he's not allowed to drink. Another courier shares a tale of a message so long, it was carried in 2 parts, one strapped to each thigh. But what if he fell? Someone asks. Then we'd have 2 contradictory treaties, he replies. Everyone chuckles. A woman with a bow across her lap tells of her recent assignment, escorting a governor's falcon across 4 provinces, complete with a diet of freshwater fish and no less than 4 cushions. It refused to fly. It did, however, scream every time someone mentioned taxes. You sip your stew slowly, letting the stories wash over you. It's rare to feel seen in this job. Most of the time, you're a ghost, appearing, nodding, disappearing. But here, among others who know the same saddle sores and tea burns, you can laugh, complain, and most importantly, listen. Because this is more than gossip. It's data, real-time updates on station morale, route hazards, and who's fallen in love with the Station 23 cook, currently 3 people, none of them successful. Later, someone pulls out a 2-string fiddle and begins to play a low, mournful tune. You lie back, using your saddlebag as a pillow, the stars blinking awake above you. A nearby rider murmurs. Ever wonder what the messages say? You all pause. Then, almost in unison. Nope, because that's the rule. You carry the words. You don't read them, but sometimes it's tempting. Sleep comes easy tonight. You're not alone. The message is still sealed. The horses are dozing. The stew is gone. And the road? It will be there tomorrow. Section 15. The night passes gently, the fire dying down to soft red whispers, your sleep interrupted only once, when a nearby rider starts snoring in rhythmic gallop patterns. You wake before dawn, stretch beneath a bruised sky, and saddle your horse with the easy movements of someone who could do it blindfolded and once did, during a prank that ended in 3 weeks of stable duty. Today's leg is long, dusty step, no stations, no tea. You ride steady, letting the rhythm of hooves and wind braid into your thoughts. It's peaceful, for about an hour. Then you see it, a smudge on the horizon. Low, moving. You squint. Your horse flicks an ear. The air tastes different, sharper, metallic. You ride closer. The sky grows darker. The smell of ozone rises from the grass like steam. The smudge grows teeth, a storm front, wide and boiling, chewing the edge of the world. Mongol couriers feared few things. Bandits, border checks, soup made by angry cooks. But this is different. Because out here in the open, there's no shelter from a steppe storm. You pick up the pace. Lightning flickers. The wind slams sideways. Your horse rears once, then bolts forward. Rain hits like thrown pebbles, hard and fast. Visibility. Gone. Temperature? Dropping. There's no station in range. No cliff to duck under. Your only option is the emergency protocol every yam courier learns early. If the sky falls, fall with it. Dig low, hold high, wait. The storm is faster, but you are smaller. You leap off, tie your horse to a low bush, and begin to dig. Not much, just a shallow hollow enough to curl into. You throw your coat over your saddlebag, not to keep yourself dry, but to protect the message. The storm hits full force. Wind howls across the steppe like a choir of wolves. Your horse huffs but stays grounded. You crouch, soaked and shivering, counting each second between flash and boom. The ground pulses. The sky flashes. Once, too close, the air buzzes with static. Then it passes. Slowly. Eventually, the thunder fades. The wind collapses. The rain retreats, muttering. You rise, dripping and sore. Your horse shakes violently and gives you a look that says, "I would like to retire." You check the message tube. Dry. Intact. Sacred. The storm has moved east now, chasing its own tail across someone else's path. You remount, soggy but alive. You once heard a legend about a yam courier who rode through 3 storms in one day, and afterward his beard turned white. You don't have a beard, but if you did, it'd be twitching. As you ride on, you spot a cairn freshly blown apart by wind. You stop. You gather the stones. You rebuild it, because the message is safe, but the road must be marked. Always. Section 16. By mid-morning, the storm is a memory, and your boots squelch with each step. Your horse is still grumpy but moving, your gear still damp but functional, and the message tube, miraculously, is untouched. You're back on track, but now your nerves are buzzing. The post-storm silence feels too quiet. Then you hear it. A distant rustle. Then a sharp whistle. You freeze. You've entered one of the more unpredictable stretches of the Yam route, an area near the foothills where bandits sometimes test their luck. And you're a juicy target, alone, moving fast, and definitely carrying something sealed and important. That's when you reach for your emergency arrow. Not for shooting, mind you. Mongol couriers rarely carried full bows. You're not a warrior. You're a messenger. But you are trained in signal defense. Quick, visual warnings designed to scare off attackers and alert nearby riders or patrols. The arrow you carry isn't ordinary. It's short, with a hollow wooden shaft and whistle vents carved into the fletching. You notch it into a compact bowstring strapped under your saddle and fire it straight up. It whistles, loud and shrill, a rising scream that echoes across the steppe. It's not meant to hit anything. It's meant to say something. Namely, this rider is armed, trained, and possibly not alone. It's a bluff, but it works more often than not. You wait. Nothing moves. Then, finally, 2 birds lift from a patch of grass to the north. False alarm. Or maybe real eyes, now retreating. You'll never know. You retrieve your emergency arrow, tuck it back in your bag, and continue, heart pounding. This wasn't your first false alert. Probably won't be the last. The Mongol Empire is mostly peaceful, mostly. But there are always outliers. Tax deserters, disbanded soldiers, ambitious goat thieves. That's why couriers are issued not just gerrage and message tubes, but also signal flags in bright red and blue, flash mirrors for daytime code, and for the truly desperate, a bone whistle said to summon guard patrols. Debatable. Most just summon confused marmots. The Mongol system didn't just rely on riders, it relied on perception. You had to look dangerous, or at least too risky to intercept. That's why you were taught to ride in straight lines, to keep your posture tall, your gear neat, your gear glinting in sunlight. You were a symbol of the Khan's will, not a stray traveler. And the emergency arrow? It was your punctuation mark. You once heard of a courier who carried 3 signal arrows. When ambushed near a ravine, he fired all 3, one straight, one high, one into a cliff wall. The whistles echoed in 3 directions. The bandits fled, thinking reinforcements were coming from all sides. You like that story. You adjust your coat, check your satchel, and ride on. This road doesn't end in drama. It ends at a station. With stew. Hopefully. But you're ready if it does. Because the message still needs to move. And you got more than words in your quiver. Section 17. The light begins to dim. Not with clouds, but with dusk. The horizon softens. The wind, once sharp, turns into a breath. You squint upward and see the first signs, smoke curls rising from 2 distant peaks. You smile. It's a language only couriers know. You just spotted the night riders. Long before the Yam had full infrastructure in place, Mongol couriers depended on signal fires to navigate after dark. Some were built into permanent towers. Others were just elevated stone platforms along high ridges. But all follow the same pattern. 1 puff equals all clear. 2 equals message incoming. 3 equals danger. 4 equals reroute. You count. 2 steady curls. Somewhere out there, another rider is moving. The fire crew knows it. And now, so do you. You slow slightly, waiting for your own relay point. Sure enough, a few kilometers ahead, a small hill rises with a ring of stones at the top and a pile of dried dung and kindling beside a compact yurt. Fire team post. A boy no older than 12 waves from the edge of the hill. You wave back. He's already got the torch ready. You dismount, breathe for a moment, then walk up the hill. As you approach, the firekeeper dips his torch and lights the pile. It flares fast, clean, hot. The signal fire leaps into the air with a satisfying whoosh. 1 tall puff, a pause, then a second. You've been seen. The firekeeper marks a slate with your route and time. You sip from a goatskin he offers, barely sweetened tea, still warm. Then you remount. Riding at night is different, less noisy, more careful. Your ears take over. The beat of hooves, the occasional owl. Once, a fox crosses your path, glancing back like it's judging your posture. But you ride confidently because the signal fires are alive. Each puff you pass confirms your route. Each light flicker tells you the road ahead is still yours. Historically, these fires weren't just visual. Some had bells hung in the wood stacks that would chime softly when lit, sending sound cues in fog or over water. Others used colored smoke, resin mixed with herbs to make blue, green, or red puffs. Rare but elegant. A French story claims one firekeeper could read smoke like a poem, knowing not just what was lit, but who lit it. You can tell by the rhythm, he once said. Some riders are calm, others nervous. Tonight, you hope your smoke said calm. Your horse moves easily despite the darkness. You guide it with your knees, hands light on the reins. The moon rises, fat gold, and slowly pulling the world toward stillness. In the distance, the next fire flickers. You nod to no one and keep going, because the night doesn't stop the message. And neither do you. Section 18. The moon rides high now, silvering the world like a spilled jar of paint. You've passed 4 signal fires, 1 stray wolf, and exactly 3 rabbits that decided you were not worth fleeing from. All things considered, you're making excellent time, which is how you make your biggest mistake. You're tired. The fire posts start to blur. The hills look too similar. And somewhere after the 3rd ridge, and before the crooked pine tree that absolutely didn't used to be there, you deliver to the wronger. Again. To be fair, it looks right. 2 horses tied out front, smoke from the chimney, and a felt banner flapping lazily in the night wind. You dismount, your boots crunching in frost-laced grass. A dog barks once. You're greeted by a young man with half a mustache and the polite caution of someone who's unsure if you're delivering news or demanding soup. You flash your gerrage, explain your route, and present your message tube. He nods, bows slightly, and disappears inside. You stretch, drink the last sip of your tea and wait. And wait. 10 minutes later, he returns, holding the message. Wrong tent, he says gently. You blink. But the banner? He shrugs. Same family crest. Different branch. You want my cousin. 2 ridges east. Of course. Cousins. You retrieve the message, bow apologetically, and accept the mug of tea he offers anyway. Because Sumerian, Chinese, or Mongol, you never refuse tea. The real Station 21 is, indeed, 2 ridges east. When you arrive, it's quieter, more formal. A woman with a ledger and sharp eyes takes your message without comment. She doesn't even smile as you explain your error, though you spot 1 twitch at the corner of her mouth. You wouldn't be the first, she says, or the worst. 1 rider gave us a baby goat instead of a map last spring. You log your arrival time, check your horse's hooves, and receive a bowl of something called midnight stew. It tastes like turnip and sleep. As you lie back in your mat beside the station hearth, you reflect on the reality of the yam. You will get lost. You will deliver messages to people who don't want them. You will accidentally drink soup meant for a visiting dignitary. And yet, the message still moves. Because even mistakes on the step become stories. And even stories carry weight. Section 19. The sun rises slow and syrupy the next morning, painting the grasslands in gold and honey. You feel it in your knees, your back, your elbows, the unmistakable weight of having ridden too well for too long. But you're close now. One last station. One last handoff. Today, you carry not just a message, but a diplomatic seed. A letter designed not for instruction or orders, but to tilt the future. You check the seal again. Flawless. Today's delivery goes to a minor frontier governor, someone important enough to require polite phrasing, but not yet important enough to assume obedience. That's where diplomacy comes in. Mongol diplomacy wasn't always backed by armies. Often, it began with a single piece of paper in the right hands. The letter you carry likely contains a request for grain stores, a suggestion to send tribute, a reminder of shared enemies, a warm, pointed nudge about joining the empire sooner rather than later. Historically, these letters were extraordinarily effective. Why? Because Mongol envoys didn't posture. They presented their messages with calm, procedural gravity. Refusing a letter from the Great Khan was not just unwise, it was a cosmic miscalculation. You ride through a gentle valley now, your horse moving steadily. The air smells like fresh grass and distant ash. You pass a small milestone marker carved with a falcon and a quill, symbols of diplomacy. This is where it happens. You arrive at a low-walled outpost with 6 yurts, 1 banner, and a single flagpole with a bronze tip. The governor's girth sits squarely at the center, flanked by 2 guards who barely glance at you after spotting your gerrage. Inside, you're ushered into a chamber that smells of sandalwood and goat. A scroll table rests between 2 pillows. The governor sits cross-legged, hands folded. You kneel. You produce the message tube. He does not reach for it immediately. Instead, he studies your face for a moment. Then he nods once. You hand it over. Both hands. No flourish. He breaks the seal with a bronze pick and unrolls the scroll. Silk, finely inked, the lettering tall and deliberate. His eyes move quickly. At one point, he makes a soft "hmm." He doesn't dismiss you. Instead, he calls over an aide and says, "Prepare a reply." You wait in a side room. Tea is brought. It's bitter and smells like sage. You drink it in silence. 15 minutes later, the aide returns with a new scroll, freshly rolled and stamped. "You take this east," he says, "to Karakoram. It is a yes. That's it. Just yes. You've carried the message across 600 kilometers of dust, rain, wolves, wrong jers, emergency arrows, and 3 questionable stews, and it worked. A city will join the empire now. Not by war, not by siege, but by 1 scroll. And now you carry the answer." Section 20. The governor's reply scroll sits cool and firm in your satchel, its seal still moist, the ink inside probably barely dry. It's short, simple, and enough to reroute supply trains and redraft border lines. You sling your bag over your shoulder with the same casual motion as always, but you know, this message matters. And so you ride east again, back toward Karakoram. By late morning, the road leads you through a patch of lowland marsh. It's not marked on most maps, those that survive the weather anyway, but it's known among Yam couriers by name. The tea tent of the elder postmaster. It's not an official station. Not anymore. The man who runs it hasn't been issued horses in 2 decades. But he still has a tent, a cauldron, and the kind of weather-worn eyes that can spot a courier's limp before they dismount. His name is Sok. No title, no rank, but everyone who passes through this low wetland leaves carrying more than they arrived with. And so, when you see the smoke curl upward and the crooked reed pole that marks the tent's edge, you veer off course. Not far. Just enough. Sok is already pouring tea when you arrive. He doesn't ask your name. He never does. Just gestures to a mat, hands you a wooden cup, and offers the kind of look that says, "Speak or don't." It's your throat. The tea is bitter and smoky. A floating stem brushes your upper lip like a soft rebuke. You sip in silence. Then Sok begins talking. Not about politics. Not about the message tube, clearly peeking from your bag. No, he talks about horses. He names 24 by memory, including 3 you once rode in provinces you thought no one remembered. He asks after one, Do you remember the red mare with the crooked hoof in Station 12? And you nod. She bit your thumb. He chuckles. Then he offers you something better than tea, a new stirrup strap. He notices your frayed leather, the stiffness of your left leg. He tosses the replacement beside you with a nod. Mine. Older. Smarter. Less likely to kill you. This is what the T10 offers. Quiet upgrades. Adjustments to your ride, your posture, your expectations. No sermons. Just shared silence. Then, just before you leave, Soak says, without looking up, storms are behind, but your return will face winds. East winds bend knees. You nod. It could be a proverb, could be a weather report. With Soak, it's usually both. You remount. You wave once. He does not wave back. And as you ride away, your saddle sits better. Your leg aches less. And you realize he slipped a small rice cake into your coat pocket. Still warm. The message is still sealed. But your spine is straighter. Your boots don't drag. Because sometimes, diplomacy runs on more than paper. Sometimes, it runs on tea, rice, and people who remember which horses like to bite. Section 21. The wind starts to pick up not long after you leave the tea tent. It's not hostile, exactly, just insistent. A slow, steady push from the east that makes your coat flap like a disgruntled bird, and your horse mutter complaints with every third step. You adjust your scarf and lean in. Then you hear it, a low, eerie chorus, rising from just over the next ridge. Not human voices, not storm winds. Wolves. You freeze. So does your horse. The sound echoes, not close, not yet, but close enough. You scan the slope. Grass. Rocks. One old tree. Nothing helpful. You're too far from a station. Too close to the Riverbend Gulch, a favorite path for night-stalking wolf packs known to test lonely riders. Here's the thing about wolves. They don't want you. They want your horse. And your horse knows it. You dismount and do what you were taught. Make yourself larger. You stand tall, arms out, gear rattling. You pull a long strip of goat bell string from your saddlebag and wrap it around your waist. Chimes ring softly with each movement, a kind of sonic scarecrow routine. Then you light your signal ember, a small pouch of pine resin and dried dung. It smokes fast and foul, filling the air with the smell of burned hair and disappointment. You wave it in wide circles. The wolves fall silent. You wait. Then, a flicker of movement. 4, 5 shapes. Eyes that reflect moonlight. But they're holding position. You pull your spare bowstring tight across your chest, not to shoot, but to hum. A slow, rising vibration. Mongol couriers believe certain tones could spook predators. Not always, but you're willing to sing if it gets you through this. So you do. Low. Off-key. A lullaby for danger. The wolves hold. Then one peels away. Another follows. Soon they're gone. Or at least, they've decided to wait for someone tastier. You exhale. Your horse exhales. You douse the ember with spit and stomp the ashes. There's a reason the Yam route included these risks. It was built across wilderness, not just for convenience, but for control. To remind every rider and every rival that the Mongol reach was absolute, even where wolves roamed. You remount and ride on. Slowly, watchfully, one ear tuned for howls, one hand resting on the message tube, because the letter still matters. And this time you outstare the wild. Section 22. The hills begin to rise again, gentle at first, then steeper, dusted with frost. You pull your coat tighter as the wind shifts colder, sharper river air. You're nearing one of the more treacherous parts of your return journey, the frozen crossings. In summer, the Yam routes include dozens of fords and shallow wades. But in winter and early spring, you face the other extreme. Ice bridges, some solid, some suicidal. Today's is a particularly infamous stretch, the Twin Forks of the Orkhon, where two rivers meet, freeze unevenly, and often shift without warning. You arrive at the edge of the first fork just after midday. The ice looks solid. That's a lie. You dismount and walk the edge. The surface glitters like polished glass, but there's a ripple to it, like skin stretched too tight. You toss a rock. It skitters. No crack. Encouraging. Or deceiving. Historically, Yam couriers developed a simple technique for crossing these rivers, the slide and pray. You wrap your horse's hooves in felt pads to dampen impact, remove your stirrups and shorten the reins. Then, walking beside the horse, you start across, step by slow, cold step. Every creak in the ice feels personal. Halfway through, you feel the first dip. You freeze. Your horse snorts. The ice dips beneath your boot. You drop into a crouch, lowers the center of gravity, spreads the weight. Then slowly, breathlessly, you move forward. Another 10 steps. Then another. The wind howls. The ice groans. And then you're across. The second fork is worse. The current underneath is stronger here. You can see it. That gray shimmer of moving black water under pale ice, like a lurking thought. You debate. You consider backtracking 3 hours north. But then you remember something. The station master at 19 marked a shortcut. You search. You find it. A low rock dam just downstream, barely visible beneath snow and branches. A rather-clever bridge, left by someone who once got stuck here too. You lead your horse across the rocks, barely wide enough for a hoof. Your boot slips once. Your message tube clinks inside your coat. You stop breathing, but you don't fall. By the time you reach the other bank, your legs are shaking, not from cold, but from focus overload. You mount quickly, before the frost remembers you, and gallop hard until the sound of the river disappears behind you. There's a theory among riders. Every yam path has one ghost. One place where too many have fallen, or frozen, or simply vanished. You don't want to meet yours today, so you keep moving. The seal is still unbroken, and the ice, for now, has held. Section 23. You ride into the next station, just as the light begins to slant sideways and the shadows stretch longer than your patience. Your gloves are stiff with frost. Your face is windburned, and your horse looks at the station gate, sees the fresh hay and glowing brazier inside, and starts walking faster without permission. Inside, the yurt is warm, blessedly so. The station master, a young man with a reed pen tucked behind one ear and tea stains on both sleeves, barely glances up as you hand over your gerrage. Then he notices something else, the gleam of your return seal. "Ah," he says, suddenly alert. Diplomatic reply. You nod. He nods back, slower this time. "Then we'll need to log it." Welcome to one of the lesser-known pillars of the Mongol communication empire, the postal registry logs. Contrary to their image as galloping conquerors, the Mongols were also tireless bureaucrats. Every message you carry, especially diplomatic ones, has to be registered, recorded, routed, and confirmed. And that means paperwork. Clay tablets early on, birch scrolls later, wax-sealed slates for special deliveries. Everything logged twice, once at the dispatch station, once at the receipt station. You sit beside the station hearth as the scribe unrolls a thin parchment scroll marked with lines, dates, and symbols. He finds the entry from 3 days ago, your outbound message, and prepares to match it to the incoming reply. The details must match. Route number, message type, courier ID, that's you. Your name appears in phonetic shorthand. Time of departure, to the quarter hour. He grunts. You made good time. Then he dips his pen in a pot of thick red ink and draws a completion circle next to your name. It's nothing fancy, just a loop. But to the yam, it's everything. The circle means delivered, confirmed, alive. You're handed a receipt token, a clay disc stamped with your message's registration number. You'll return this at Karakoram, proof that the journey was made, the scroll exchanged, and you didn't sell it to a trader in Samarkand in exchange for a fur hat and some pears. Which, apparently, has happened. You ask how often messages go missing. The station master shrugs. Once every 100, usually storms, sometimes wolves. Once, he lowers his voice. Courier fell in love with the recipient and decided to stay. You raise an eyebrow. He nods solemnly. Message was delivered. Eventually, you sip your tea and tuck the reply scroll deeper into your coat. It's safer now. Logged. Stamped. A known thing in the system. But still your responsibility. Because the yam isn't just about speed. It's about continuity. Every station, every scroll, every scratch symbol on every ledger adds up to something bigger. A trust in movement. And for today at least, that trust still rides with you. Section 24. The road home is quieter now. Wider, flatter, more familiar. The terrain smooths into long stretches of golden grass, soft hills, and the occasional rusted cart wheel half swallowed by time. This is the part of the yam where couriers tend to let down their guard. It's too easy, too predictable. You don't, because the message isn't delivered yet. Your horse, a sturdy older gelding you've nicknamed Barley, trots with resigned determination. He knows this route, has probably carried messages down it longer than you've known how to pronounce your own name in 3 languages. But he doesn't slow. Neither do you. Then in the distance, the silhouette appears, Karakoram, capital of the empire, heart of the network, home to scribes, generals, monks, merchants, spies, and about 5 dozen highly opinionated cats. From this city, Genghis Khan's descendants shaped the known world, and from its gates stretch all roads of the Yam. You pass the outer posts, 2 flags, red and white, one for peace, one for arrival. You raise your hand. The guard waves you through. No questions. Your coat, your gear, your posture all mark you unmistakably, courier. You ride straight to the central message hall, a wide timber building beside the palace walls, roofed in black tiles, guarded not by soldiers, but by scribes with ink-stained sleeves and no tolerance for delays. You dismount. A steward meets you at the gate. You present your gerrage, then the reply scroll. He handles both like live coals. The scroll is whisked inside. You're not invited to follow. Your part is done. Almost. You're escorted to a side room where a quiet man in a blue robe records your return on a slate board. He notes your arrival time, your route mileage, and asks only one question. Any interference? You pause. Wolves. Storm. Wrong GR twice. He nods. Still good time. He hands you a token, Mongol Express badge level 2. It's stamped with today's date and a falcon in-flight sigil. You tuck it into your belt pouch, just beneath the rice cake you still haven't eaten. The badge matters. It means you completed a diplomatic relay on time, unbreached and uninjured. 3 more of these, and you'll qualify for priority rider status. Shorter routes, better horses, warmer tents, and the occasional rumor of a silk-lined saddle. You step outside into the noise of Karakoram. You've been here before, but it feels different after a long relay. The smell's sharper. The sky vida. The streets busier. A boy runs past chasing a hoop. A merchant hawks candied plums. A monk chants near a shrine. No one looks at you twice. But somewhere, behind thick doors and diplomatic curtains, your scroll is being read. Possibly aloud. Possibly right now. And that's enough. You swing onto Barley once more and guide him to the courier's quarters. There's hot soup waiting, a dry bed, maybe even a game of who got stuck in what swamp with the other riders. But for now you breathe, because the message is safe, the road held, and you are home. Section 25. The night comes easy in Karakoram. You sit beneath the eaves of the messenger's quarters, boots unlaced, fingers wrapped around a bowl of hot broth that tastes mostly of onion and barely of regret. The courtyard is quiet, just a few murmurs from the bunks, the occasional grunt from a horse, the soft click of some courier sharpening a buckle they'll probably lose tomorrow. You watch the stars rise over the city wall. You've been on the road for 9 days, over 600 kilometers. You've crossed steppe and ice, burned dung and eaten stew you didn't ask enough questions about. You delivered a message that nudged an entire region toward alliance. And you brought back an answer, a sealed yes that could change maps, redirect caravans, and maybe, someday prevent a war. But right now it's just quiet. You lie back on the thin straw mat and close your eyes. The aches fade, the smells soften, the air moves just enough to remind you you're alive. And somewhere, not far from this very room, your message sits in a scroll box, still warm from the fingers that opened it. The road is behind you. The mission is done. Let yourself drift now, slow and easy. Let the steps of your horse echo just once more in your mind, the sway of the saddle, the wind on your face. Let it all soften, stretch out like the steppe at dusk, endless, peaceful, still. The fire has gone out. The gates are closed, and you, just one more rider in a long, long chain, can finally rest. Wind down 300 words. The air cools gently, settling over the stone and wood of the city like a blanket. Somewhere, far off, A bowl clinks, a door creaks, and the wind rolls low through empty alleys. Your legs are warm beneath a soft wool throw. Your head sinks slightly deeper into the pillow. Let your thoughts loosen. No more roads. No more schedules. No more goats standing in front of the wrong jar. Let them all fade into stillness, into that long, slow breath that comes just before sleep. You are safe now. The saddle sores will ease. The dust will wash off. The fire smell in your coat may never leave, but somehow that's comforting. You earned it, step by step, mile by mile, across river ice and storm winds and smoky signal fires. And now there's nothing left but peace. Let your eyes close. Let the shadows settle in. Let the journey dissolve into one long line drawn across golden grass, fading into night. The message is delivered. The sky is wide. And sleep is here.